Good evening, everybody. Thank you for showing up for the workshop. So, warm welcome to all of you. So, this session we're going to have on blending and profiling of Robusta by Dr. Manuel Diaz, Rural Development and Coffee Senior Consultant at ONA Consulting, Mexico. A warm welcome to you, Dr. Manuel Diaz. So, in this workshop, Dr. Diaz will discuss the theory of slow roasting profiles and how they can be used to achieve better results when roasting Robusta coffee beans. He will demonstrate the results of slow roasting on different origins and processing methods of Indian Robustas, and will also demonstrate how high-quality Robustas can be used in high-quality coffee blends to balance coffee flavors, enhance body, and increase flavor complexity. A short introduction to Dr. Diaz. He's been into rural development research and practice. As social anthropologist, he has conducted research on popular cultures, regional elites, indigenous peoples, traditional organization, land rights, land markets, and economic organizations in rural areas. Has achieved multidisciplinary experience working as a national civil servant and international consultant in poverty alleviation and rural development projects. Based on multidisciplinary approaches, strategic planning, quality systems, and participatory methodologies, he has designed local development and agribusiness cluster strategies in several products in Mexico, like tobacco, mango, banana, oil palm, rubber, and to a great extent in coffee. So we take great pride in welcoming Dr. Diaz today for this workshop. Welcome, sir. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. You make me remind very old years. So I've been working in coffee consulting for the last 20 years, and around 15 years also doing consulting for the roasting industry. So what I would like to show you is a little bit on the background of fine Robustas, how to process them, how to profile them, and how to roast them, and what's the role of Robusta in the coffee market. So I'm gonna show you many photographs. I'm gonna speed it up so we can also share a little bit of coffee. So please, if you have any question, raise your hands. I want this to be as much interactive as possible. So I have very strong light on me, but I still can see you. So just raise your hand and I will allow you to share any issues. So let's get started. Robusta is one of the more than 130 coffee species known and one of the most commercially valuable. It represents, since 2013, a little bit more than 40% of all coffee consumed in the world. It is only known for the last century or so. The first scientific trials were done in Indonesia in 1920s. And most of the research done since then was just to maximize productivity and soluble extraction. So there is very little done about using Robusta for high quality coffee production. Robusta has been used by the soluble industry to produce cheap raw material. So just 10 years ago, there was not that much Robusta being exported. It was produced for national soluble industries. So in Brazil, for instance, the 7 million bags of coffee produced in Brazil were dedicated to the soluble industry. So we are now witnessing, since 10 years ago, a very fast process of differentiation. We don't see it, but there is already more than 1 million bags of coffee of high quality Robusta. We don't see it, we don't feel it, because there is no market reference. There is no contract for high quality coffee. There is no grading system for high quality coffee. Only in 2010, the CQI and Ugandan Development Coffee Authority developed a proposal to change the grading of Robusta. But it's very little known. There has been a little promotion of this proposal. So it is not reflected in any major grading system. So nobody has taken this seriously to reform the regulatory framework in Robusta producing countries. We still use the commodity London reference to trade Robusta. Despite the genetic diversity that Robusta has. So it's 10 times more diverse than Arabica, and therefore has the ability to adapt and be the future of at least the short-term coffee. So 40, 50 years, nobody knows what's going to happen with this planet. But in those 40 to 50 years, Robusta is going to make a difference. It will soon become more than 50% of all coffee available. So Robusta, as I said, has been the object of very little research. The centers of research and distribution were first Indonesia, then Ivory Coast, and recently Brazil. Brazil is ahead of everybody else. It has the biggest collection of Robusta germplasm, the biggest research in terms of improvement. They have released several Robusta varieties with high quality cup. The major producers of Robusta are Vietnam and Brazil, and far ahead the rest. If we consider just the 5 first Robusta producers, we have 90% concentration of the market. So there is a really very weak supply distribution of Robusta. Despite the quality, the supply is concentrated in very few countries. So first, Vietnam, second, Brazil, third, Indonesia, fourth, India, and fifth, Uganda. And if we take India and Indonesia out, because of high consumption above the rate of production growth, so supply is going to be concentrated in only 3 or 4 Robusta producing countries. So if things continue this way, I think Indonesia and India are going to supply very little amount of Robusta in the world. So it's heavily concentrated, but Robusta is already representing more than 40% of overall consumption, as we mentioned. There are lots of countries that can increase production in Latin America. There are efforts in Central America, which is going to be heavily affected by global warming. So there are serious pilot projects in Nicaragua, Guatemala, even in Costa Rica, and Colombia has joined recently. So there may be some increase in production in Robusta, particularly high quality. So these new entrants are going to go to niche markets. In Southeast Asia, we have China, Thailand, we have Laos, with a small ability to increase Robusta production, and Indonesia. Indonesia is the second largest coffee land available for Robusta and for Arabica, but there are not that much interest in investing in coffee, so there is more focus on the palm oil and other higher value added crops. So at the moment, Vietnam, Brazil, and Indonesia concentrate very much a huge chunk of the production of Robusta. Brazil has almost unlimited capacity to chop down Amazon, unless the European Union is not very keen on allowing this, but there is very little they can do. It's happening as we speak. Vietnam may increase some production, but what is happening is farmers are no longer very much interested. They fought poverty very successfully, but now farmers are aiming at something else, something better. And Robusta is no longer that profitable. So Vietnam is not going to increase that much. So Robusta is captured by the commodity segment. It supplies most of the soluble coffee raw material, some of the cheap components of roast coffee blends, and it's a very interesting product because of the density and the amount of soluble solids. So if you compare the cost of raw materials in the commodity segment, you will see that Robusta is still very, very profitable proposition for the industry. There is no much interest in differentiated Robusta. Some of the biggest buyers of Robusta are interested in not concentrating supply in Vietnam and Brazil. So there is some uneasiness, some concern about big buyers of making more African coffees, more Robusta from Latin American countries available. But there is very little prospects for this to happen. So global warming is going to affect all types of coffee. We already see that Arabica is squeezed. Many farmers keen on keeping productivity and quality are moving up, but there is not that much available in the upper land. So there is a risk of frost and haze, and the last forest supplying water are in the upper parts. So there is not that much prospect for a massive relocation of land. So what is happening is that Arabica is adapting through a new generation of hybrids with Robusta genes. What we drink, we consider as Arabica, in fact, already has 35% Robusta genes. You will find very little 100% Arabica coffee in the market. It almost disappeared. But nobody is disclosing this information. Consumers are not aware of this. And Robusta has a very bad name. There's been marketing surveys in which consumers are offered Robusta and Arabica without telling them what they are drinking. And the level of acceptance is very high. Almost 40% of consumers do not care about acidity, and they accept Robusta very well. But as soon as they disclose that there is Robusta in one of that cups, then they reject the coffee. So there is a lot of discrimination and bad name of Robusta. We need to work on that. We have evidence that coffee is losing density because of global warming. So Arabica is under oxidative stress. We have anything from 10% to 30% of beans perfectly produced, nicely picked and processed that do not reach the density level of a fully developed bean. They show in slightly discolored beans. We can call it semi-Quakers or underdeveloped beans. They are not defects. They are not in the 19th century tables of defects that we use. But you can spot them after roasting. Of course, when there is droughts or other major climatic disorders, you will see that this jump to more than 30%. This is a comparison of malformations. In the blue color is genetic deformations, and in orange color, non-genetic deformities of improved varieties. So the higher the productivity of Arabica varieties, Catimores, Sarchimores, F1s, the higher the number of underdeveloped beans. So Robusta has a tremendous genetic diversity. These are pictures from wild material. You have different types of seeds, different sizes, different colors. These are improved varieties in Rondônia, Brazil, with high productivity and good cup quality. So there is tremendous diversity and potential for Robusta to grow, but there is very limited research done. So To understand Robusta, we need to understand the difference in chemical composition. It's a different product. It is no a useful approach to compare to Arabica because it's just a different product category. It has a unique chemical composition, a unique set of flavors that we can manage successfully in the beverages. So if we compare with Arabica, it's a different coffee species. It is allogamous. It needs cross-fertilization. It only has 22 pairs of chromosomes. It has a higher resilience. It has a shorter phenological cycle. It is adaptable to a wider range of climates. We don't know exactly how much genetic plasticity Robusta has, but you can find it from sea level in Western Africa to 1,400 meters in Uganda, in the wild. So it's a tremendous ability to adapt to different conditions. It has more productivity and more tolerance to pests and diseases. So Canepora is 10 times more diverse than Arabica, and therefore it is possible to improve the quality profile in very short periods of time. So for Arabica, it took around 30 years to show this potential. It took us lots of improvement, work on etherosis, retrocrosses, improved processing to enjoy the beautiful cups of coffee that we can enjoy today. My expectation is with all the science we have, all the genomic analysis that can improve the time frame in which we can produce new varieties, it may take no more than 10 to 15 years to have a Robusta quality revolution in place if we invest in it. So this depends on the willingness, on the political will of coffee-producing countries to engage in this differentiation. Yes? Genetic plasticity is the ability of plants to react to changes in the environment. It has been identified that there are 70 groups of genes responsible for this adaptation. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with global warming, but these 70 genes are going to be responsible for this ability to adapt. And there are some materials that are more resilient than others. There was just a recent article published last week on the comprehensive analysis on wild materials in Uganda that I strongly recommend. And it shows that there are some areas in which Robusta already has this tremendous ability to resist droughts and heat. Yes.
You have shown some research institute throughout the world regarding Robusta.
Yes.
What sort of a research they are doing? They are doing genetic modification of the seed or something like that, or some other research?
In Brazil, they have this experience. They have introduced the genes responsible for drought tolerance from Western Robusta materials to Conilons in Rondonia successfully. Yes.
Yeah.
I just showed you some pictures of the amount of Robusta seeds.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if we look at chemical composition, there are some differences, but let's stress first that DNA is almost the same as Arabica. Robusta is the father of Arabica. So with enough investment in genetic improvement, we can do just too much to improve Robusta materials. It is said that Robusta is more bitter, less sweet, and less acidic than Arabica, which is partially true, because Robusta has a tremendous diversity. So it all depends on which Robustas are you talking about. When scientists report chemical composition, particularly 10 years ago, they were reporting improved Robusta. chemical composition. But if you see the data on wild materials, it is just outstanding similarities. Very high content of malic acid, very high content of sugars, even reducing sugars, which is more important for aroma complexity. So it all depends. It's just very limited research available and very limited representative information. So the information we have is very biased. There is much more research done in improved Robustas, in big plantations in Brazil or big plantations in Ivory Coast than in the wild. So it's not representative of what we can achieve if we improve different types of materials. Let's begin with bitterness. So it is true that Robustas may have 2 to 4 times chlorogenic acids and caffeine. Chlorogenic acids and caffeine are important part of the immune system, and they always are found in proportional relationship. The higher the amount of caffeine, the higher the amount of chlorogenic acids. But these are responsible also for most health benefits of coffee. So chlorogenic acids are not that bad. In fact, they are also very important in complexity. They are the most heavy acids. They contribute to mouthfeel. They contribute to spicy aromas. If you roast properly, and this is what we are going to discuss later, you can take full advantage of chlorogenic acids. So it is not necessarily a bad thing. So when scientists report these results and they talk about very high bitterness, they don't know how to roast. They are just scientists. So for Robusta, you need to roast slowly at lower temperatures because you break down around 50% of chlorogenic acids into cyanic acids, which are more bitter than caffeine itself. So if you roast fast, you have a problem. With Catimors or with Robustas, you have higher content of chlorogenic acid. That's why Starbucks coffees have a problem. Because the business of Starbucks is not selling coffee, it's selling milk. And they always roast fast. And they don't have bad coffee. But if you pay attention, this coffee is always smoky, bitter, and they cannot do otherwise because they are looking at profitability, efficiency, they are saving fuel, they are saving labor hours, rent. They need to roast fast, right? So this is your competitive advantage. They don't sell Robusta, but they sell Catimors, Sarchimors with 35% genes of Robusta.
So they sell Robusta.
No, they don't sell Robusta, but they sell what we consider Arabica, but it has 35% Robusta genes, and you cannot roast fast those Catimors.
Thank you.
Another evidence is that they don't buy ecologically processed coffees, Arabica coffees in Colombia. Coppers are fully aware that non-fermented Catimors are unbearable for espresso. They are just too bitter and astringent. So you need fermentation and sound roasting to deal with this, which is also true for Robusta. We will discuss that. Less sweetness, as I said, it depends. It depends which Robusta you're talking about, how do you picking, how do you fermentation. Most of the perceived sweetness come from roasting, from sweet aromas and minerals. There are no carbohydrates left after roasting. So most of the perceived sweetness, even in Arabica, comes from proper caramelization, so complex sugars. Less acidity, to some extent true, but as I said, on shaded plantations in Brazil or Vietnam, they are going to have less acidity. But if you look at shaded coffees from India or from Latin America or from Southeast Asia, they have more organic acids content. Secondly, if you ferment properly, you can add acidity to Robusta. Third, if you fertilize and make phosphates available, you increase the formation of phosphoric acidity, which is the lowest pKa organic acid, meaning the most acid of all acids. The acid that use Coca-Cola to make it bearable, so you can forget about the amount of sugar there is in a Coca-Cola. So this is a very good insight for Robusta producers. You need to make phosphates available. Yes.
Could you please repeat whatever you said after perceived sweetness part? Like,
Yes.
in terms of characteristics.
Yeah, it is recently proven by scientists that what we perceive as sweetness in coffee has nothing to do with carbohydrates, or very limited to do with carbohydrates. Because after roasting, all of them were transformed into bitter compounds, acids, and aromas. So it is sweet aromas, particularly 23, very sweet aromas that our brain convert into sweet taste perception. Those come from a major part from caramelization. Vanilla, almonds, nuts, honey, and so forth. Okay, so this conclusion about Robusta is not completely true. Bitterness is very uneven. As I said, it can be extremely bitter, but it can also be moderate bitter. And you can deal with it through fermentation and proper roasting. So don't worry about bitterness. In fact, it is well received because most of the tolerance to heat and drought is going to come from chlorogenic acids. This is the most important set of chemical components that are going to allow Robusta to adapt. So instead of looking for low bitter Robustas, just let's forget about that because most benefits come from it and its ability to resist, to tolerate global warming comes from chlorogenic acids and caffeine. So better focus on fermentation, development of acidity and in other terms, and proper roasting. Acidity can be improved through fertilization and fermentations. It is very important. Some improved Robustas particularly have lower level of sugars because they were genetically designed to grow fast and in big volumes. So the higher the productivity of Robusta, the lower the level of sugar formation. That's also happening in Arabica because of oxidative stress. So we can introduce shade, we can improve nutrition, and we can do selective picking, and that will contribute to enhance acidity. So most of the acidity comes from the transformation of sugars and free amino acids available in the seed. If we look at organic acids in a cup of coffee, this is more or less what you see. So we have twice as much of chlorogenic acids. We have more quinic acid, which is one of the cyanic acids that you break down during roasting. Caffeic, ferulic should be added to that list. And they are very bitter, but also heavy and important in some complex chemical reactions that bring about nice aromas, particularly spicy, as we are going to see. All right, so let's move. So, in my view, in the next 30 to 40 years, perhaps many things are going to happen. Perhaps we are going to have new species coming into the market, but that will take time. So in the meantime, the best bet to have enough coffee to supply the industry and to consumers is going to rely on Robusta and the new generation of F1s, the retrocrosses, more genetically diverse Arabicas with 35% Robusta genes. In a recent pilot project that I did, I looked into Arabicas and grafted Arabicas. And I found that if you graft Arabicas with a good quality rootstock from Robusta, you get amazing results in the cup. You improve Arabica. We've been grafting with whatever Robusta. Don't do it. Look for a compatible Robusta material with a deep rooting, and you will have extremely interesting results. So you're not only going to double productivity, but improve cup quality. I just finished a pilot in southern Mexico, and the results are amazing. So use Robusta also as a rootstock, as a grafting material, but not whatever Robusta. You need to use a compatible material with deep rooting system. So the first way you can transform the flavor of Robusta in a positive way is through processing. So we have lots of history, lots of insight about how to transform in a very interesting way the flavor of Robusta. We need better fermentations, better drying, and better understanding on the physiology of the seed. Robusta is more stiff. It has a rounded shape. It is more susceptible to fast drying and to mechanical damage. We haven't been paying attention, but Robusta needs proper care. We need new generation of machinery. Please don't use Arabica machinery because it's not the right approach. And don't follow the wash strategy, believing that the best processing is just washing Robusta. Because Robusta has less sugar, less complexity, and what you do is you wash down the complexity of Robusta. So that's not the right approach. There are many ways you can improve processing. I cannot spend enough time, but we need to pay attention to the amount of sugars and the thickness of pulp. Robusta ferment and dry too fast because genetic improvement has led to this. Very little pulp and very little sugar. So whenever you find this type of materials, you need to add sugar and water to improve fermentations. So you can soak, you can add sugar, you can add a starter with local microorganisms if you want, or with added yeast, whatever you want. But you need a rich substrate. And if you have a thin pulp with low level of sugar, you have a very limited substrate. Therefore, you're going to have very limited fermentations. So look for more complex fermentations. I'm not talking about longer fermentation times necessarily, but richer substrate. And local microorganisms are the best. So processing is definitely the key for complex flavors. You have everything. There are different ways you can process Robusta in the wash way, naturals, honeys, whatever. The labeling of these methods is unlimited. So picking is the first challenge. Of course, it's becoming more difficult to pay labor and the cost of selective picking, but it's also true that the more ripe cherries you pick, the higher the complexity of flavors you can achieve. In Vietnam, in Brazil, strip picking is the standard because prices are very low. So the industry is still not willing to pay more for Robusta. And the statistics on pricing are just revealing that beyond $1 a pound, the industry refuses to buy Robusta. What we are seeing now is very exceptional because there are not enough Robustas, but usually the pricing keeps a ceiling beyond which which one is almost impossible to sell a Robusta coffee. Yes. No, it's not possible to ripen or to improve the chemical composition of Robusta. What you can only do is to break down higher level of chlorogenic acid and caffeine in the green or unripe cherries. That you can do with fermentation, an aggressive fermentation. You cannot call it ripening. You can call it just
Growing.
lowering
Yeah.
bitterness. Well, yes, you can increase the grade. You can cut down the level of bitterness and astringency in an unripe cherry. Or if you sort out all the unripes, you can do a very nice job through an aggressive fermentation.
So green cherries can be converted into red cherries by ripening agent. That was the question.
Well, but you cannot call it ripening. On the tree, that's the only way you can ripen. So ripening, we call it several chemical changes. We are going to see that. So the ripening cycle in Robusta is faster than in Arabica, but it can reach almost the same levels of sugar than Arabica. This is a wild material from Uganda. It reached 25 bricks. So almost the same amount of sugar than in Arabica. Just delicious coffee. I remember I made an espresso shots after drying these coffees. I was desperate to try it. It is a wild material from Lake Victoria, and it was just delicious. High sweetness, high acidity, just delicious coffee. So you can find the same behavior in terms of sugar formation. So the more you wait, and with the advantage that Robusta doesn't drop the fruit, so it has more holding capability. So the problem is the coffee berry borer or rains or fungus diseases, whatever. So you need to look if it's possible to wait until the fully ripening point is achieved. So if we graph different Robustas, you will see that the level of sugar formation is just outstanding, and the density is very high. So as we did with Arabica, we just need to pick the right point to have a better Robusta. But of course, what you are going to see in the industry is very different. So Robusta is traded with a tremendous amount of defects. Grade 8 in Conilon is 300 defects allowed in 300 grams sample. So what does it mean? For every 2 beans, 1 is a defect. So what would you expect from that coffee? Not that much, right? And there is very beautiful Robusta available. India is a wonderful example. Farmers apply almost the same standards to treat Robusta as Arabica, which is unique in the world. So I think Indian farmers should be pushing a new set of standards for high quality Robustas, because this is a unique example of what you should do with Robusta. The only problem is that you need to apply a new paradigm, how to process Robusta, because it's a different chemical and physical attributes compared to Arabica. So have a look to this parchment, because you won't see it again, okay? This is just amazing process using new technologies, not the old Arabica pulpers, but new set of pulpers with cutting devices and low pressure. You need to apply less pressure. The seed, the Robusta seed is stiffer than Arabica. You can do all sorts of methods to improve fermentation. This is an example in Brazil, 240 meters above sea level, and they are selling at Arabica prices. They are using yeast to ferment and applying Arabica standards, specialty Arabica standards with great success. The coffee is not amazing, but they are in the bubble of fermentations, delivering IPA Robustas, I call them, with maracuja and floral notes and all the rest. Nothing complex, but anyway, very successful. They are selling to China. They are selling to these markets that appreciate this type of novelties. You can apply the fashionable anaerobic fermentation methods equally to Robusta, and you can cut down bitterness. Of course, you can wash down complexity if you take it too long. So my advice is you need to work on preparing a starter, not waiting 20 or 60 days fermentation. This is crazy. You wash down the complexity of flavors. So what you need to do is you need to apply the right amount of microorganisms you prepare beforehand. Then when you apply this starter, which can be the natural microbiota from the farm, you have shorter time frames to do a nice fermentation. So if you want to start fermentation, because our level of chlorogenic acid on caffeine is very high, there is antibiotic properties of Robusta cherry, so it takes longer until the microbiota finds an efficient bacteria to break down these materials. So you need to do a little bit of research, trial and error, to find a suitable starter, and then create a massive amount beforehand, before you do the picking. 7 days beforehand, you have right amount of microorganisms, and then you speed up the fermentation. You're going to have wonderful fermentation in shorter periods of time, instead of washing down the complexity of flavor, because you have lixiviation and you have exosmosis during the fermentation, meaning transfer of soluble solids to water. Even if you do dry fermentation, you will release free water from the cherry. That water is going to transfer soluble solids. So my experience is you wash down the complexity of Robusta if you do very long fermentation times. You can do control temperature in simple ways. You can add local microorganisms for local food. You can do fermentation in the seed, as this wonderful wet hulling in East Java. This is one of the best Robustas in the world, done with the wet hull method. It's very simple, very cheap, and it's delicious. Even the unripe cherries taste very nice. So this is done in East Java. Very cheap method. You do like honeys. So you pick the cherries, pulp them, leave it in a fermentation tank for overnight, and then a little bit of washing or no washing at all, and then you dry. After around 35% moisture content, you hull in wet. So that's why it's called wet hull. So you remove the parchment and encourage a fermentation in the seed. It's a very aggressive method discovered in Indonesia in early 18th century. And the result is a delicious spicy flavors. And I think you like spicy, right? I suspect that you like spices. So this is just delicious Robusta coffee. The best espresso I ever had was done with this Robusta. This is the ancient method. It was pounded. The seeds were pounded in a mortar for rice. You keep the pulp because it's complex substrate. For fermentations to be complex, you need a proportion between sugars and nitrogen. The higher the sugar content, the higher the nitrogen requirement for fermentation. So it is a big error to remove the pulp, because the pulp has more nutrients for fermentation, complex fermentations. So Japanese discovered this in early 18th century, and you speed up the drying process.
So can we use the starter culture for this from the last batch of fermented?
You can do that.
Yeah, that will make it faster.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this is the way it is done today, with very good results. This is a Liberica in Malaysia, using the sous vide, which is a slow cooking. This is a very interesting method. Moderate temperatures, around 35 degrees, to encourage yeast fermentations. You can cut down the bitterness of any high bitterness coffee, like Liberica or Excelsa. And then methods in Vietnam, some courses I've done. All right, so before we start talking about Robusta, let me tell you. Size distribution and density are very important to understand roasting. So this is the normal curve of any varietal. It can be Arabica or Robusta. And it shows the Mother Nature recipe. So the right size, the best seeds are the mid sizes. Very small seeds usually have defects, usually have problems. Lack of water, dieback, attacks from insects, something went wrong. The seed didn't achieve full development. Very big seeds have genetic malformations, triangles, elephants, improperly big cherries that the plant is going to be unable to fill with nutrients. So these are going to be underdeveloped in terms of sugar, amino acids, oils, and so on. So one of the biggest mistakes we continue doing, because we still work with 19th century standards, is roast everything together. Size distribution and density distribution in Robusta is more uneven because of cross-fertilization. You know the mother, but you don't know the father, right? So it can exchange genetic materials by 50 kilometers, which is the distance a bee can travel. So size distribution in Robusta is even wider. So if we roast everything, we are not going to roast to perfection. So for effective roasting, we need to at least sort the beans in 3 different batches. You can buy nice quality Robusta, but ask the dry mill not to give you everything together, because it's almost impossible to roast to perfection. So medium sizes usually are very complex, are more acidic, more aromatic. Some of the nice aromas we have in exotic varieties come from small sizes. And big sizes usually are woody, not very interesting flavors. So if you roast separate, you can roast to perfection. Not all densities can be roasted the same way. So most of Vietnamese Robusta, around 2/3 of Vietnamese Robustas are lowland Robustas, so meaning low density. Around perhaps 3/4 of all Robusta in Brazil is lowland Robusta, from sea level to 300 meters. So it's low density. The market is not recognizing this difference in the market. This is a missing criteria for quality. So Indian farmers producing high quality Robusta are going to have much higher density. So shaded high density Robustas are subsidizing Brazilian and Vietnamese Robustas. Nobody cares about that, but that's the fact. The pricing for the same Robustas is unfair to shaded, lower productivity, but better quality, higher density Robustas. So the higher the density, the more heat you need to roast properly. So if you're going to roast Vietnamese low density coffees, you need less heat, less temperatures. Okay, so this is about the chemical composition and the roasting changes. So basically, caffeine, trigonelins do not undergo changes. Amino acids are the raw material for Maillard reactions. Proteins are broken down partially. Chlorogenic acids are broken at around 50%, depending on the temperatures. So if you roast slowly, you are going to break less, much less than 50%. Reducing sugars, and sugars all are transformed. Reducing sugars during Maillard reactions between 140 to 180, and complex sugars from 185 and beyond. Lipids are partially transformed, and minerals are not transformed. So there are 4 sets of chemical reactions that are going to be responsible for the flavor of coffee: hydrolysis, Maillard reactions, caramelization, and pyrolysis. So what we need to focus in Robusta is in caramelization. If you roast too dark, too fast, you just get smoke and charcoal, and this is not very interesting flavors. So it's not true that Robusta should be roasted dark, and it's also not true that it should be roast fast. You need to roast slowly, and you need to focus on caramelization, sweet expression, caramelly, chocolatey, and slightly spicy profile. So usually high-quality Robustas should be roasted between medium light to medium dark to show the complexity, cut down bitterness, and to have just the minimum viscosity to develop crema and mouthfeel. So these are the references that you need to look for. So the higher the density, the higher the amount of roasting you can do. Low density, like Brazilian or Vietnamese Robustas, the best you can do is medium light. Beyond that is just smoke and charcoal. You don't have that much soluble solids available. So the trick of the industry is to develop polysaccharides. Usually you don't transform polysaccharides, but a small fraction can be developed to contribute to viscosity. 2 or 3% can be transformed into soluble compounds that are going to contribute to viscosity. So I think we can now share some coffees, roasted slowly. These are Indian coffees, one wash and one naturals. They are not specialty coffees. They are just clean, mainstream Indian coffees, but delicious. I want you to try them. They were just roasted properly. There is nothing special, nothing fancy, but you can see how delicious, how interesting flavor profiles you can get. So I will continue while the coffee is available to you, if you don't mind, so we can finish everything I want to tell you about Robustas. All right, so finally we get to roasting. Sorry. Finally. So slow roasting, what is slow roasting? Well, there are 3 ways of roasting. Slow roasting was discovered by Arabs, although Italians said that they discovered it. But this pattern is continuous. The Americans are saying that they discovered quality, so who cares? The fact is, Arabs discovered bitterness and the way to deal with bitterness. They discovered that slow roasting, using butter and using sea salt can do the trick for you, right? So long time before Starbucks, the recipe was already worked out. So slow roasting is one of the first ways of discovery to roast. And it makes sense why they discovered this, because they have primitive roasting technologies. So even if you go to Ethiopia, you will see women roasting for you as a guest. Men are hopeless to roast, so it's the senior woman in the house who roasts. And you will see that they roast slowly. They wait until charcoal is red hot. They wet the green beans and they start roasting very, very slowly. So they slow down the process on purpose to reach good expression. Because with primitive technologies, you cannot do otherwise. If you speed up the roasting process, you are going to get charcoal, over-roasted, uneven roast. So slow roasting was the first, then fast roasting. At around mid-20th century, we have better technologies to speed up the roasting. And since then, we are focused in increasing the speed of roasting. But this is not making any benefit for high-quality roasting. Until very recently, Probat finally understood that there are 2 ways of roasting. And they are now, only on request, slow roasting machines. So if you are thinking about buying a Probat, please ask for a slow roasting version, because everything is designed to do fast roasting. They have inbuilt high negative pressures, meaning air sucking pressures. So to speed up and to improve security and cleanness and efficiency of convection roasting.
Sir, the density of the Robusta bean, density, of the bean, is it dependent on the biodiversity of the land?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
As you said, the density of the Robusta of Brazil and Vietnam is lesser than Indian.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Is it dependent on the
Temperature.
biodiversity of the land?
Temperature.
Biodiversity of the land.
Temperature is the main variable affecting the phenological cycle.
Okay.
Of course, the height, the latitude, the
Okay.
shading, and the orientation of your farm are going to affect temperature, as well as the winds and the rains and all the rest. Yes. So focus on temperature
Thank
of
you.
the farm, and you will understand density.
Thank you.
Yes. So the second was fast and then hybrid roasting. We have 3 ways of roasting. So slow roasting is about how to transfer heat. The first secret of slow roasting is preparing bean for thermal shock. Your roaster, let's say, is at 200 degrees Celsius and your bean is at room temperature. If you apply heat immediately, high power, you're going to have over roasting or at least uneven roast. There are high pressure roasters that can roast in 3-5 minutes, but it's not the best quality roasting. So the bean do not transfer heat efficiently. So what Italians discover is that if you wait until you achieve thermal equilibrium, then you can apply successfully, efficiently heat without disturbing the bean. Heat transfer, even the most dense metals for air spacecrafts need to be transferred slowly, layer by layer, layer by layer. And in the coffee, we do the same. The plant do the same. To develop the seed, the farmer do the same to dry the seed, layer by layer. There is no other way. So for roasting, we do exactly the same. We transfer heats layer by layer until the full seed is even. Then you apply heat, a lot of heat, whatever amount of heat you want. In the case of Robusta, not that much. And then you can roast perfectly well. You can wait 1.5 minutes to 2.5 minutes, and you will reach near thermal equilibrium point. So Italians, what they do, they throw the beans, they use 0 power for 1.5 minutes to 2.5 minutes, 0 power. So the bean is going to absorb inertial heat in the drum, and when they reach thermal equilibrium, you apply heat. This is the first secret of slow roasting. Second secret is you never use high power. So you use moderate, medium levels of power. It can be 45 to 55%, depending on the heat capacity of your roaster. If you achieve the right level of heat units, you don't change power until you are at crystal transition between 210 to 214 degrees. The physical structure of the bean is going to become malleable, like rubber. At that point, you increase airflow to allow negative pressures. You cut down power to 30%. And then you go to medium roast. You want to go to dark roast, you need to, when you approach the second crack, you need to cut down to 10, 5, or even 0% power to develop full roast into the second crack. High density Robustas can enter a few seconds into the second crack and still show a very complex profile with some spicy notes. So the whole process may need around 14 to 16 minutes between medium to dark roast in efficient modern technologies. So it depends on the heat capacity of your roaster. So this is what we talk about, this is what we bear in mind when we talk about slow roasting. So extended dehydration phase, extended Maillard reactions, full dehydration to have intense caramelization. Caramelization do not happen in the presence of water. It deviates chemical reactions. So badly dry coffee never achieve good caramelization. So it's very important that you have perfect drying. And perfect drying can only be achieved by resting, by suspending, interrupting, drying. If you rely on mechanical dryers, you need to stop drying at least 2 times. This was discovered by scientists, although Ethiopians knew it since many centuries ago. But Brazilians prove that you achieve better efficiency and better drying quality, and therefore you can roast to perfection if you do 2 interruptions at least. One around 28%, and the other one at around 15%. The drier the coffee, the longer the interruption, to even out the content of moisture. Because you use not only heat, but you use diffusion to even out the moisture content. Otherwise, the moisture gets trapped. If you do mechanical drying continuously, there is no way you can remove internal moisture. Then you will have pockets of moisture trapped in the bean. Even if you achieve 11% moisture content, it won't be even. So you will have higher water activity, and caramelization, it won't happen fully in your bean. So it's very important that your beans are properly dried to achieve intense caramelization and good expression of sweet. All right, so why we do slow roast? To maximize caramelization, sweet aromas, mouthfeel, and crema. That's what Italians discovered. And of course, it's not easy. Proper slow roast is a very insightful technique that only Italians can master. Recently, Americans have been trying to practice slow roasting, but they are not up to the task. They were trained into fast roasting, light type of roast for specialty Arabica. So there is a different understanding on this. It's entirely different. So you do fast roast, Scandinavian style, to maximize aroma and acidity. So you can produce a mild coffee that can be drunk all day long, because Scandinavians drink between 10 to 14 kilograms per person a year. It's very cold. But for full mouthfeel, chocolatey, buttery coffee, you need darker roasts. So the beauty of darker, sweeter roast is sweetness and spiciness. You modulate the taste of coffee by allowing better extraction of fats, creating sweet aromas, and developing extremely nice spiciness and resinous wood like cedar or pine wood. So the flavor is completely changed into a nutty, caramelly, chocolatey, and spicy coffee. It's just delicious. If you find good dark roast, it's a different flavor, but delicious. As good as light roast in Arabicas. You can enjoy it with milk, you can enjoy it on its own. It's just delicious. It's a different flavor produced by different set of chemical reactions. So the explanation why slow roast makes sense is because you change the structure of the bean. We have, at a microcellular level, we have a tremendous expansion. So we allow entrance of water and carry all nice soluble solids and fats. If you do fast light roast, the macrocellular structure of the bean increases, so you inflate the bean, but not the microcellular structure. So you are allowing gas in between the layers of the bean, the macro layers of the bean. So apparently the bean expands, but it's not microcellular expansion. In slow roasting, you keep the integrity of the cells give in orderly without violent fractions or fractures, and you have a microcellular expansion. When you grind, you achieve more even grind size distribution, and when you extract, you have a much deeper extraction. So I'm working with the roasting industry, the soluble industry. I have proven that if you do nice medium roast, you can achieve higher extraction of soluble solids compared to a fast, very dark roasting. Apparently, it doesn't make any sense. Medium roast will have less extractability than dark roast. Well, it depends how you do the roast. If you do nice, slow roast, you will achieve more even particle size distribution and deeper extraction. Okay, so this is the secret of slow roasting. You can see it in this graph. In the red, this is the same color of roasting, medium Arabica roast, but with two different roasting profiles. One is slower than the other one. The red one is slower, so you can see that there are less powder. This is powder. So the red line shows a better particle size distribution because it's just 30 seconds slower roast. So you see the impact on flavor depends also on physical properties of the roasted coffee. You change the chemical reactions, but also the properties, the breakability, the density, the way you transfer mechanical force during the grinding. And that explains the improvement of flavor when you do slow roast. So what we consider the flavor of Robusta is misunderstood completely because we refer to defects. Whenever you ask how did your coffee taste like, your Robusta coffee taste like, everybody is going to say woody, rubbery, smoky. Well, that's not true. Robusta do not taste that way. Defects. Underdeveloped beans taste that way. So contaminations, excess polysaccharides in lowland Robustas. So the rate of polysaccharides and extractable solids is very low in Vietnamese or Brazilian lowlands. There is nothing you can extract. So it's going to be woody. But that's not the taste of Robusta. It's how you make it. So the taste of Robusta is much more complex than we think. There's, of course, some herbal, some minty notes coming from the chemical composition, coming from higher chlorogenic acids. Of course, there is less acidity and more spiciness. But spiciness is very nice, particularly in this country and Mexico. We appreciate spices. So it's just amazing spiciness you can develop in Robusta, and that's what Italians discover. You can improve Arabica blends by using fine Robustas. But keep it secret and don't pay anything to farmers, right? That's the secret. So spiciness is a trigeminal sensation that changes the way we perceive flavor. So it's a tremendous raw material. Whenever you have spices, then you can change flavor. If you work on as a roaster and blender on spiciness, you can be on top of the competition. And that's exactly what Lavazza is doing. They are using Robusta to add this spicy touch on Arabica blends. They use between 20 to 80% in their blends to improve the overall flavor profiles. So if you use good Robustas, you can develop a very appealing flavor profile that can come from nuttiness to fruitiness to spiciness, depends how you process your coffee and how you roast your coffee. So Robustas can be roasted at a medium light roast, and you will focus on nuttiness and fruitiness. If you roast at a medium level, you concentrate on nutty and caramelly notes and a little bit of chocolate. You focus on medium dark to dark, you're going to focus on spiciness and mintiness. So you transform the flavor first by processing in the farm, and secondly, by roasting. Can you imagine what you can do if farmers and roasters work together, they can do magic. Because they will be working on how to improve the expression of Mother Nature. We just did some experiments, some processing trials with Harley Farm here in India, and the results were just fantastic. Dried chilies, tamarind, minty notes, amazing Robusta. Some of the best Robustas I ever tried in India. And we did just very simple processing techniques, similar to what I've been recommending. So we don't need very complex machinery or very expensive microorganisms brought from Germany. Just work with the microbiota, which is symbiotically associated with the cherry. So let me add this. If you're a roaster, I did this exercise to compare the potential value of different types of coffee, from commodity Robusta to commodity Arabica, then specialty Arabica and specialty Robusta. If you multiply the density of the bean by the cup quality, by the price in the market, you get an index of potential value. And look what is delivering better cups of coffee and more value to the business. Good Robustas. And this has been the secret of some roasters. When I started to work in Robusta, I used to go to Ecuador, Uganda, Laos, different countries, and finding amazing Robustas. And I was asking, who is buying this coffee? And the reply was, well, some Italians, you know. Then I went to Uganda and asked, who is buying this wonderful Robusta? Some Italians. And then I went to Ecuador, who is buying this amazing Robustas? Don't tell me that it's some Italians. How do you know? So Italians have kept this secret. You pay a little bit more and you get wonderful cups of coffee. And that's the backbone of value in the business. You don't sell the size of the bean, you don't sell the color of the bean. You sell cups of coffee. Somebody is going to drink your coffee at the end of the day. So fine Robustas are delivering a good component in billions of cups of coffee, but they are not paid. And the market is not fixing this issue. So if we compare the attributes, sensory attributes, this is the result. Good Robustas are very near in all attributes, and sometimes surpassing the attributes. So this is comparing against the best Arabicas. So we are very near, and we haven't done that much to improve Robusta. So can you imagine if we seriously improve Robusta? So Robustas are very important for a big segment of the market. The coffee market is composed by several segments. The massive price-sensitive segment is the most important. Billions of cups of coffee a day are served for the masses, for workers, for low-income people. So if we pretend that specialty coffee is going to save the souls of the farmers, we are wrong. Specialty segment is very tiny. 5, perhaps 10% in some high-income countries. And everybody wants to feed there. It's an illusion. We've been very successful at creating these high expectations. But it's wrong. It's better to work with reasonable expectations. So we need to deliver the cups of coffee of former tea drinkers, people with prior experience in coffee that are enjoying soluble coffee. And during the pandemic, soluble coffee increased 20%. So if we thought that the days of the Solvo coffee were counted. We were completely wrong. So what we need to focus is in differentiating the Robusta segment and to deliver the different categories of coffee that the industry is requiring. So Lavazza and other roasters are really willing to pay a little premium on better Robustas. So if we produce efficiently better quality Robustas, there may be a very nice segment in different markets. Switzerland, which is a high-income country, is appreciating high-quality Robustas. I'm going to show some pictures of a roaster who is selling only Robusta. And it's only blending with Arabica at no more than 10% Arabica. Amazing, right? So this is going to change. In 10 years, you will remember me. We were talking about an entirely different market. It will take only 10 years instead of 30. So the Robusta market is very important because it opens up the markets. Markets that were not there are opened up by Robusta. English, Chinese, Russians are drinking Robusta. Later on, they will upgrade their categories of coffee and they will move to better tasting coffees. But without Robusta, we wouldn't be aiming at selling to these markets. So Robusta is very important because it keeps price-sensitive markets under control. It creates affordable cups of coffee. It is the source of genes. It is the most resilient type of coffee available now. We don't know if in 40, 50 years there will be another species. But at the moment, it's the most valuable type of coffee for coffee businesses. So if you want to have profitable operations in your roastery or in your farm, keep an eye on how to improve flavor on your Robustas. So for Italy, it's been a wonderful discovery. They turned into espresso early 20th century. Before espresso machines, they were drinking a very bitter channel brew. So there were no control boilers, there was no fine grinding possible. So when espresso machines improved, the fast extracted concentrated brew appeared, and it created a wonderful opportunity for Robusta. So Robusta, in fact, was banished from the New York Stock Exchange in 1910. It was evaluated as a promising coffee category. There was a commission assessing Robusta, and the conclusion, oh, this is unbearable, this is rubbish, we better ban this coffee. So Robusta was banned for many years from New York Stock Exchange. But Italians knew better. They understood very well. So they incorporated, they saw that it was just a wonderful addition to an espresso blend because it adds mouthfeel, it improves crema formation. The bubbles in crema need chlorogenic acid to retain the stability of the crema, and fats. So Robusta can add an important component for espresso blends. If you present an espresso blend without Robusta in Milan, which is the most discerning consuming part of Italy, they are going to tell you that this is weak, this is not interesting. The crema modulates bitterness. If you wash your tongue with this wonderful crema, it will inhibit the bulbs that assess bitterness. So you will perceive just a creamy, delicious, sweet beverage. That's why you need to have a thick crema in espresso. These barista competitors in the World Barista Championships, they are working with long fermentation Arabicas, fancy varieties, but very thin crema. That's fine for competitions, but in the public, nobody will drink these sour espressos, believe me. This is good for competitions, for innovation. There are wonderful activities there. But for the market, it's a different story. So the tradition of blending in Italy is more than 3 centuries old. The knowledge on how to blend different types of coffee passes from one generation to the next, and nobody is going to tell you about this. If you ask Ili, can you please share with me your blending recipes? They are not going to give you anything. Lavazza or whatever. They have from one generation to the next unique recipes. But I work out, working with them, more or less how they think. And the construction of a blend follows 2 dimensions. First, you need to work on the chemical composition, being bitterness and acidity, the 2 major constraints to your blend, because these are the most perceivable taste. The threshold of perception of bitterness is extremely high. You need just a few parts per billion to perceive bitterness. So if you have excess bitterness, you need to work out your blend. The second most perceived taste is acidity. So if you have a very high acidity or very low acidity, you have a problem in your blend. You must have at least a little bit of acidity to modulate positively bitterness, to enhance sweetness, and to have a more rounded flavor cup. So this is the first dimension. And of course, sweetness is a major component of your blend. For Italians, if the espresso is not very sweet, it's not an espresso. It's something else. So it has to be very sweet. How does it come at a medium to dark level? How do you develop sweetness? Well, as I said, everything has to do with aromas and minerals. So minerals are very important. Perhaps you've experienced in a farm in which natural spring water is available to drink. You will remember that this water is very sweet. Why sweet? If there is no carbohydrates. No, in this case it's not aroma, it's minerals. So our brain creates sweetness out of minerals. For what reason? We don't know. But that's the fact. So our brain creates many things that are not there. We create sweetness with color. There was this trial among sensory scientists in which they put just simple water in different color cups. And the red cup was perceived as the sweetest water. And it was the same water. So our brain is really magic. They do tricks on us, but nice tricks. The second age in which you need to develop the blend is from a base to a character and to complexity. So the base is a neutral component, a component that may be just mouthfeel, sweetness, and crema. It can be Robusta, it can be naturals, but it depends on neutrality. So cleanness and allows to speak the main actor, which is the character coffee. So the second component of your blend is going to define the flavor. It can be, as we saw, nutty flavor, it can be fruity flavor, winey flavor, spicy flavor, whatever the primary notes you want to showcase. So this coffee needs to be high density, needs to be strong character, usually good acidity, and well-defined primary notes. So your terroir, your mother nature flavor. The flavors that are common to your farm or to your region need to be showcased as a character coffee. Usually for base, you can use up to 40% if it's a neutral flavor coffee. For character coffee, usually you need to play with 35 to 50% of the coffee. And then the third component is a coffee that is going to add aromatic complexity. Why you think you need aromatic complexity? I think you need coffee, my friends. You are getting asleep. Is there more coffee available? So if you want. Yes, one reason is that you're roasting medium for espresso blend. Let's say the base has to be roasted at a medium to medium dark to develop mouthfeel and crema. That's what the base is for. So you are going to sacrifice acidity and aroma. The character coffee should be roasted to showcase the primary notes, usually the sweetest, nutty, or whatever spicy notes you may have. So usually it's roasted at a medium dark level as well. So you need to add aromatic complexity to round the cup, and you need acidity to compensate the bitterness of your base and the bitterness of your character. That's why you kill two birds in one shot. You roast aiming at complex aromatics and acidity. So usually you need to use a very aromatic coffee. So what type of aromatic coffees you may think of? Long fermentation coffees, anaerobic fermented coffees, naturals, winey naturals or honey naturals, those naturals that are processed fermenting the cherry first, that were discovered by Yemenis, slow dried on the shade or semi-shaded conditions. Those are the most aromatic coffees you can have. And then you roast medium light, so not very dark, to keep those aromas that you develop during the fermentations. So Lavazza and other roasters are experimenting with this new long fermentation or anaerobic fermentation coffees, because we are now maximizing aromas. With this type of fermentations, you lose body, you lose bitterness, but you win aromas. This is an organic acid. So if you want to roast this type of coffees, you are not going to do dark, because all these secondary metabolites that you develop during fermentation are going to be lost. So the best way to roast these long fermentation coffees is through medium light, moderate, slow roast. Not very slow, because you sacrifice aromas. When you do slow roast, you accept that you're going to lose acidity and aromas, but maximize caramelization and body and crema. That's the reason why you need a particular coffee that will add complexity to your blend. And these aromatics are going to be trapped in the crema of your blend. So how are we in terms of time? I think almost done. Good. Oh my goodness, I cover everything. That's very strange. So these are a few examples. This is a blend, one very successful blend in Seoul, Korea, the competitor of Starbucks. So for you to have an idea of how to build up a few commercial blends with a very good profile. So you use Vietnam and Brazil as your base. You use Colombia and Honduras, high quality, similar flavor profile for character, nutty, chocolatey. And you use complexity with an Ethiopian natural. Very good, very nice example. You find the most available coffees. So usually for these commercial mass-produced blends, you need consistent supply of coffees. So
What is about Indian Robusta? Not used.
in this one, no. But you will see. Don't get worried too soon. So the Robusta coffees improves crema, improves balance, improves complexity in the blends. Thickness. So some examples. Blue Bottle is a specialty coffee chain that was bought by Nestlé. And since the very beginning, they were using Indian wash Robusta. And they were not shy about telling the consumer. So this was very interesting, very important. I recognize them for doing that. And one of the guys who was responsible for this was in one of my courses. So he really recognized that Indian Robustas was up to the high quality blend. So it was not to cut down the price, because it was priced at a C plus price. so a premium Arabica price. It improves sweetness, crema is very thick, the primary notes are caramel, toffee, and spicy notes. And it was blended with Guatemala and Ethiopia. So two very good Arabica coffees. There you have. Okay. You have Congo Robustas being used in another blend, mixed with Guatemala and Brazil to have a slightly smoky aroma. Look at the crema, just amazing crema. Without Robusta, forget about that. So this Robusta Congo is a natural one. You can see the roasting is medium dark. So wonderful blend. And this is the roaster that is using only Robustas. This is also amazing. This was another person that attended some of my courses and became in love with high quality Robustas. He saw, this is my business. And soon started a roastery just with Robusta. So he has many blends, different types of blends. This is one of he numbered the blends, so this is number 4 with Cameroon Naturals, which is, Cameroon is one of the hot spots for diversity in Robusta. It has just tremendous diversity of good flavors. The problem with Cameroon is they managed to spoil their coffees. Soily coffees, fungus contaminated, woody, fast dry coffees. I don't know, it's just a pity. This country is blessed by high quality Robustas. But there is no fine coffee available in the market from this region. So Uganda, so this is, oh my goodness, this is blend with Arabica from India. I'm sorry. So 30% Monsoon Malabar and 20% Uganda Rowensori, which is an Arabica wash. So 50% Robusta, 50 Arabica. But he is paying attention, he is trying to showcase the Robusta. And then there is number 5 in which washed Robusta from Mexico is used. This is wonderful, very sweet Robusta. Extremely sweet and consistent, clean. This is the key component of this blend. Then Pop Natural from Indonesia, yes, the one I mentioned as one of the best Robustas in the world is used in 50% here, along with honey from Brazil. This is just nutty, chocolatey, and spicy, just wonderful espresso. The number 7 is using Arabica from Nicaragua and one of the best Robustas from Flores Island. This is a small bean with the highest density I ever seen anywhere in the world. More than 800 grams per liter, like a stone. Small bean, but very dense Robusta. Shaded, of course. And this almost virgin island of Indonesia, Flores Island. This is a fine, floral, high acidity blend. Then another blend with honey from Thailand that achieved 90 points. This is 100% Robusta. And then from Lavazza, there are many blends. They use Uganda, they use Rwanda, they use Ecuador. Of course, for the low-cost blends, they use Brazil and Vietnam. But Lavazza do use intensively Robusta. It's the key component for their success. While Illy promised 100% Arabica and contributed to this bad image to Robusta, Lavazza is quietly working on high-quality Robustas. They recently opened up a roastery, high-quality roastery, small one, that only buys microlots, both from Arabica and Robusta. So this is a good opportunity for farmers. It's called 1895, the date of the foundation of Lavazza. So if you have good Robusta, you can send samples to them. Well, Lavazza is only using Arabica. But then there is a low-tier, affordable segment coffees, perfectly roasted. I want you to mention this roastery is not a fancy roastery. It's working in the low level of pricing, but with perfect slow roasting. I don't know if you know this brand, if you can find it here in India, I'm not sure. But they are selling all over the world, and it is found in Southeast Asia. And they say in Italian, a tostadura lenta. It means slow roasting. Perfect roaster, really insightful. If you ever try this coffee, it will be a good example how to do proper roasting of Robusta. So there are different blends in which Vietnam Robusta, Brazil and India Robusta, Robusta from Brazil, Robusta from Vietnam are used. Why? Because they are selling affordable priced rose blends. But the expression is amazing. I've tried these coffees against specialty coffees, and the comparison is not that bad because of the roasting. It's just perfect roasting. They are very good at roasting. All right, my friends, thank you so much for attending. I hope you can enjoy it. Thank you. I don't know if you have any questions or concerns. I have still some.
So thank you,
I
Dr. Diaz.
serve two coffees. I think they are from Tamil Nadu and
Okay.
from Korg. I don't have full information, but they are standard coffees, nothing fancy. Do you like them? Processing, wash, and natural. One was fruity, sweet, good mouthfeel, and the wash one was good acidity, spicy, just clean, solid coffee. I like them, and we roasted in a roasting workshop we just did in Mumbai, just to showcase the relevance of roasting properly. So it's nothing fancy about the coffees, but just by roasting properly, you can have a nice cup of coffee. That was the purpose of giving you these coffees. I don't know, can you explain which one was the wash? Number one was wash, number two was natural. Just interesting coffees, right? By doing slow roast.
So,
Yes, and then you.
so you mentioned while processing, they add sugar or something, right?
No, wash process is normal wash
No,
process.
initially, during the fermentation.
Oh yeah,
time.
one option. Yes, if you have a thin pulp,
Uh,
improved variety, this high volume, 7 tons per hectare coffee, which are common in Brazil and Vietnam, you ferment very little and you dry too fast. So my advice is you soak the coffee and you can add a little bit of sugar and yeast, for example.
But doesn't sugar actually give the sugar high and the yeast? I mean the microbes go into the sugar shock or something that way, which will actually.
It's just food for microorganisms. So if you boil the sugars to avoid any contamination and add a starter, it can be a local microorganism.
Is there any recommended agent, apart from the sucrose? Sucrose is high in sugar. That actually not good for fermentation is what I've heard.
Yeah, it will add complexity to your fermentations. It will prolong your fermentation times.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any agent something which is available in the market to help?
Oh, many microorganisms can be bought, but any foreign microorganisms is better than your local macrobiota. The consortium of your pulp, dominated by the lactic acid bacteria, is very complex because it's a community of microorganisms that work together. So usually you have some bacteria that start the process of um, uh, breaking down complex molecules. The mucilage has pectin. So usually you need um, pectin breaking enzymes to start the process. So these communities already have those as a starter microorganism, and then some other microorganism join the fermentation process. So you have a specialized community associated symbiotically to your cherry. So after making hundreds of processes, I came to the conclusion that there is nothing better than your local consortium. You can isolate bacteria, you can isolate yeast, I mean, you can do many things, but there is nothing more complex than working in a consortium base. The charging temperature, there are two ways of doing slow roast. One is high charging temperature, very low power, or moderate charging temperature and medium power. You cannot mix the two. Let's say you go for lower charging temperature, 180 degrees. My advice is don't use less than 30% power. If you go to Italian style, 220 charging temperature, you can go 0 power. Yes, or 10 or 20 or 30. Every machine has a different constraints. Probat, Bueller are not going to allow you less than 30% power. So no less than 30%. That will be your lower. Perfect. That will allow you to good starting for slow roast. Fan is very difficult. I will need a couple of hours to explain how to use airflow. My recommendation is use 50% throughout the process. It's the most advanced skill. So my advice, don't play around until you are more experienced. Then there is an advanced way of using airflow. Starts with low airflow and then go to medium and then you finish with high. But I will need a little bit more time to explain how to use it. My advice, use 50% throughout the process. Yes. All right. Any other questions?
So I think,
Well, thank you very much.
thank you very much, Dr. Diaz. I think it was a wonderful session and a great takeaway for the participants. And you've been a wonderful audience. Yeah, so we have a small memento to be presented to Dr. Diaz. So please be there. Thank you. So I hope it was a great session. I've been a wonderful audience and have a good evening, all of you. Thank you very much for this wonderful session. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Can you announce there's a cultural evening happening in the plenary hall?
Okay, guests.
Musically.
Yeah, there is a musical event happening in the plenary hall. Please, please attend. Make sure you enjoy the rest of the evening on the campus. Thank you.